Hey guys, I'm here with Sundance at MLG on day 3. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the games are going, and he gave us some of his time to sit down and answer some of the questions we had and some questions from the community. So let's talk about 2011. We got through it, we started our first pay-per-view event. What are your thoughts on this event and how it relates to 2011 Pro Circuit events?
Well, I think the number one thing so far is just the change in structure, right? So we've come up with this new kind of seasonal play where we can have some flexibility around the games that are in the room at these championship events, have the arenas that feed into them, and I think from what I've seen and just from the player lineup that we had here. It's been pretty great actually. The crowd, obviously, the StarCraft 2 crowd is the dominant crowd here right now. But even on the Halo side, we really saw them turn out after being challenged. And so the only side of the room that I want to do a little bit more work on is the fighter side, and that was just a timing thing where we announced it late. So I like this format. I like it a lot. I like the fact that we're going to flow out of this into some more arenas and have even more competition because I think there's room for that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about last year with GSL. There was a great partnership where MLG was using results from MLG to see players, and vice versa with MLG invites. That kind of fizzled out a little bit. GOM TV is now using all foreign events, and there were some overlapping issues with Code A at the Winter
Arena.
The Winter Arena. It's early.
Sorry, it is. Well,
it's 1 o'clock. So what really happened there? Was there any issue, or was it just kind of working together was too hard with scheduling? Or?
Well, one of the things that's going to unfortunately happen is that you're going to have times when schedules don't line up perfectly. And we have tremendous respect for GOM and for GSL and what they've done. But our goal is to have a kind of a not a self kind of propelled event series, but a series that's open, right? So where you've got the same offering to European players, for example, that you're going to have for Southeast Asian players. And so with our new structure, with some of the things we're going to be announcing today, we have a plan that we like a lot. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to see us, working with GOM or GSL in the future or with other organizations in the future. It's just that, last year was an exploratory time for us, and it went very well, I think. And I think that you saw a lot of great matches because of that, right? But we have to evolve. We have to kind of be able to be self-sustained, and in order to do that, you've got to get to a place where you're not held back by just the intricacies of an exchange program like that, right? Like us getting seed spots and them sending players over that are hand chosen. Well, that's great. What we'd like to have everything based on is performance, right? And so we're doing some things with Blizzard around the Grandmaster ladders that are going to help us do that region by region. And we're just very excited for the structure that we've got this year, and you're going to see more of the details coming out very soon.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the pay-per-views. Mm-hmm. We've had a long period of time now since that first one, and you've had time to go over numbers and things like that. Initially, you'd said you thought it was successful.
Yep.
Did it affect your plans for the rest of the pay-per-views for this year?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if it was a failure, I think we'd see a lot more pressure. But we had an equation in mind based on our typical viewer audience, and we thought that a percentage of that audience would transfer over to the paid. And we were really close, actually, but it came in on the high side. So what that does is that allows us to investigate ways to bring you more arenas, more structures, just more competition that's meaningful, right? So it doesn't mean that they're all going to be priced at $20 or $15 with discount, but what it does mean is that we know what the economics are behind that. And that's really important. Again, I've been saying about, we're running a business, a very complicated business in some ways. So if I can simplify that a bit and know that something like a pay-per-view arena is self-sustainable, then I can try and go out and find alternatives to making it more open to people. right? And so, for example, working with partners to bring in more sponsorship opportunities to potentially lower that gate fee, right? To do different structures. We have open arenas or 8-man arenas, or or regionally focused arenas. So it was a leap of faith, right? We had a lot of faith in the community, and even though there was public backlash, I think the numbers showed that a lot of people supported it and continue to, and we're happy with it. Happy to the extent that it helped us map out a very large part of our year.
So the first pay-per-view event was exclusively StarCraft. Do you have any plans to add additional games?
Well, yeah, we StarCraft is obviously. It's a great driver for our business in a lot of ways, but the MOBA art space is one that we're looking at, and there's definitely interest to explore adding that in, and the only reason you don't see that in the room at this event right here is because we weren't able to structure a deal that worked under our new guiding philosophy, which is it's got to work within the structure, meaning that we're not doing anything as a loss leader. We're doing everything to both help with the community and the growth there, but also to propel the activity forward. So we're looking at everything. We're looking at whether or not we could get to a place where there might be a fighter arena, right? We're looking at Dota. We're looking at Han. We're looking at League of Legends. I mean, we're trying to be opportunistic but not overextend ourselves. You'll definitely see more StarCraft 2 arenas. They're already booked. We've got dates in mind that we're going to be announcing. And as far as whether or not you'll see other arenas, I think that's just time will tell, in terms of what the partnerships that we have in place, how those get finalized. But our goal last year was to explore the feasibility of arenas and actually constructing a physical space to hold them year round. I'm not saying that's going to happen soon, but we've seen that so far we can run these things and they can work for us. So there's no reason not to explore doing that with other games. We're even looking at, we're talking with Valve about Counter-Strike. I mean, we don't want to leave anything on the table. We want to make sure that we're exploring all the possible avenues, but without overextending as well. So that's the other thing that's really important.
So you'd said on another podcast, I think, that you saw this going in direction focusing on a lot of PC. And Halo has always been, the staple brand of MLG, and in the last 6 months or so, it's been pretty clear that it was dropping off a bit. How much of a pressure do you feel to keep that around in MLG until the next Halo game, as far as like brand loyalty and community loyalty and things like that?
Well, it's one of those things where the personal versus the business side, right? I personally love that title and the history because it's brought me into so many of the things that I've experienced over the last 10 years with this company. I've met incredible people. I've had incredible experiences. There's moments that I'll look back at and cherish because of that title and that community and the cycles of personalities that have come through. Having said that, though, from a business perspective, it has to make sense, right? And I think one of the things that people lose track of is that taking a break from something for an event or a quarter or half a year, if you have to, you have to, but it doesn't mean that it's over. I think we've seen, MLG as an organization potentially make mistakes by holding on to things for too long, right? And I can't do that any longer. I won't. I should say I could, but I just think that it's got to be. Everything has to be with purpose. So we're talking with 343 and Microsoft. There is a new Halo game in the works, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to fill the gaps. But that's a work in progress. So maybe I'm working a little bit harder to make sure that those gaps are filled than I would with a title that I don't have such an emotional connection to. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what is available to us, and what we can work with. So we'll see. But I'm hopeful. I'm very, very hopeful. And same thing on the Call of Duty side. Even though we haven't run that for as long, it upsets me that we weren't able to figure something out with them to keep that around because of some of the technical limitations. But there's a new version of that game in the works, and we're looking at that. So there's a lot of interesting opportunity for us in the future around the shooter space.
So one of the potential issues that's going to come up maybe near the end of the year or going into next year is Heart of the Swarm. Have you discussed how you're going to deal with the fact that, a major expansion might be released right in the middle of a season? and how will you deal with that?
Well, there's challenges to that, on a lot of levels. But I think we have some plans. We're working with Blizzard pretty closely, and they have a way that they would like to see certain things handled. And so we're going to be very respectful of that, because obviously it's their intellectual property, and that's something that we want to showcase. Right? This Forum should inject a lot of energy and hopefully even draw new audience to the game. So we have challenges, but the great thing is with our current structure of these kind of compact quarterly seasons, you could roll out of current build and go to the new expansion and start a new season fresh. We also may do some special things just around that title, pre-release, but that stuff is all really handled by the league guys, and John Nelson's looked at it and has talked with the guys at Blizzard, and we're going to make sure that there's a distinct end and a distinct start, but that there's no that the scenario doesn't put players at a disadvantage, right? Because some people have a faster learning curve than others, obviously. But at the same time, I think one of the things you may see is a little bit of a shake-up in terms of what those power rankings might be. Mm-hmm. So,
the last issue that a lot of people tweeted me about was the issue of scheduling, and it comes up a lot, not specifically with MLG, but with all major events, is that you have to start planning your event, sometimes a year in advance, and then the announcement for the event comes, much, much closer to the date, and there's only so many weekends in a season. So there was the issue with Assembly, which arguably turned out fine because there was so much hype generated from that both events did really well. Mm-hmm. Now coming up, there's a DreamHack event which is going to overlap. Why do you think this keeps happening, and what do you think do you think there's any room for leagues to work together on dates?
I think it keeps happening because there's opportunity in the space, right? There's people holding events, and it's a global scene, right? So, the DreamHack thing, literally, I think we announced within hours of each other, where we put our info out, and then the DreamHack info came out, or even if it was flipped, but all those dates were set weeks or months in advance, right? Sometimes you can't make an announcement because you're negotiating an internet bandwidth contract with a venue, right? Because you want to get a better deal. So to the fan, they say, well, why aren't these organizations talking? And even though we do talk, there's, DreamHack's not going to tip their hat, or IEM's not going to tip their hat to me necessarily. It just says I'm not going to necessarily, hand them my schedule, because within those organizations, there's, there are lots of people, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to plan your entire year. And as we have multiple arenas, we have multiple championship events like this, we're going to overlap on occasion. I mean, that's why we try to get the championship schedule out at least for the year, even without the cities, so people could see those. Well, in between them, there are going to be several arenas. So it's going to happen, but hopefully what you can do is you can limit it a bit, right? You can try and say, well, this one maybe overlaps, but the next one won't. It's just the nature of having a space with a lot of players and a lot of moving parts and pieces, but it's, to my knowledge at least, it's never been malicious with anybody maybe overlapping with us or us overlapping with them. At times, last year we had issues where we overlapped with community-run events that ran different games, and we got flack for that, and or with expos. But it's like you said, there's only so many weekends in a year, right? And there's only so many days that Columbus Convention Center is available to give us 120,000 square feet. So it's just we're overlapping with the NCAA March Madness tournament right now, right? Is that ideal? No, it's there are eyeballs going there, there are eyeballs going here. You'd like to be the only thing from an entertainment offering, for the weekend, but it just happens. It's unavoidable at this point. I think the one thing that we could do is if we had standardized kind of, these are the seasons, these are the flows to it, but I say that, and then I say, well, but then if I'm adding 2 more games and possibly doing arenas around them, and I've got special one-off events, and I've got E3, you get to a point where you just have to plan your year and hope for the best, that you're not bumping into things too much.
So last question is about the rest of the year. So you went through 2012 with some goals in mind, and maybe you hit them, maybe you didn't hit all of them. What are your major goals for the rest of this year, and what can people expect by the end of it?
Well, we are. I think the big thing that we're looking at is just expanding the offering and doing a better job of both the experience in the room and the experience for the viewer at home. we're trying to cater to the teams and the players as much as possible, right? So our idea of the arenas really was, if the players are pros and they're going to be playing, like, getting to a place where you're showing up and the stresses are relieved, right? So for an organization or for an individual player, that they just show up and play, right? Not a question of how much is my flight, am I going to have enough money to eat, am I going to, so that was a big part of that step in terms of elevating where the players are operating. So that by doing that, what we're trying to do is trying to feed back into the idea that these guys are pro players. And again, we're talking StarCraft 2 primarily right now, but they'll shift over time. So we've done that event, we've proven it can work. So now it's scaling that. And in scaling that, it's kind of more regularly scheduled competition that's meaningful, right? And not just closed arenas, open arenas as well. So that you can have these guys come out of nowhere, make a name for themselves, maybe, just burst onto the scene if they're good players. So having more of those types of events, having more opportunity for players to make a name for themselves, and just kind of honing in on what the right amount is, right? Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is, if we continue on the pace we're on this year, it's going to be our best year ever from a lot of metrics or numbers, and that's not just from audience or from sponsorship dollars. I think that's just from quality of content delivered, right? How many hours of great match content are we going to be able to produce, and how much is that viewed and consumed and talked about? Because that's really, the goal is always to create these moments, like, do you remember when, right? We talk about this sometimes, or I was there when I was in the room, it was amazing. And so by having more competition and figuring out what the ebb and flow is, that you create more of those moments.
That's it. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure we'll see you at the next event.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.